Okay, today we're tackling a supplement that is, well, pretty much everywhere. It's called alpha-lipoic acid, or ALA for short. And you've definitely seen it. It's on health store shelves, it's all over the internet, promising a whole laundry list of benefits. But what's the real story here? What's hype and what's science? Let's dig in.
And yeah, that really is the million-dollar question, isn't it? When you see one little bottle promising to fix a dozen different things, you gotta wonder, what's the actual evidence behind all this? That's exactly what we're going to unpack today. We're going to separate the marketing from the real hard science.
All right, so before we jump into all the claims, let's get on the same page. First things first, what is this stuff? What is alpha-lipoic acid? So at its heart, ALA is this really powerful antioxidant that your own body makes. It's got a super important day job, which is helping turn the food you eat into energy. But its claim to fame, the reason everyone talks about it, is its ability to fight something called free radicals. You can think of these as rogue, unstable molecules bouncing around inside your cells, causing all sorts of chaos and damage. And when you get too many of those free radicals and not enough antioxidants to clean them up, you end up with something called oxidative stress. Honestly, the best way to think about it is cellular rust. You know how rust just eats away at metal? Well, oxidative stress does something similar to your cells over a long period of time, and that's where antioxidants like ALA are supposed to come in and save the day. Okay, so with that little science lesson out of the way, let's look at the #1 reason people take ALA supplements, for diabetic nerve pain. This is the area where it has been studied the most, and it's where we have some of the highest quality research available. So what does that research say? Well, this is a direct quote from the Cochrane collaboration. And you need to know, these guys are like the Supreme Court of medical evidence. They review everything. And their conclusion from just this year, for nerve pain symptoms, ALA probably has little to no effect. Oof, that's pretty blunt.
So let's look at the actual numbers, because this really tells the story. The mean difference here, negative 0.16, is basically nothing. It's a tiny, tiny change in symptoms that a person would never even notice. Then you look at the confidence interval, which is just the range of possible effects, and it crosses 0. That means for some people, it might have done a tiny bit of good, and for others, it might have even made things a tiny bit worse. The bottom line? It's a total wash. No clear benefit here.
And just to be clear, this wasn't some tiny, one-off study. This conclusion comes from pooling together multiple big trials. We're talking about over 800 people who were followed for a really long time, some for up to 4 years. So for its biggest, most famous claim, the best evidence we have says it just doesn't work.
Okay, so if the nerve pain claim is on shaky ground, what about all the other things ALA is supposed to be good for? Let's do a quick tour through some of the other research out there. And pay attention to where this research is coming from, because that's key.
First up, what about liver protection? You hear a lot about ALA being good for your liver, but let's look at the studies.
And right away we see a pattern. The most promising stuff? It's coming from animal studies. Sure, it's interesting that ALA helped protect chickens from arsenic-induced liver damage and that it helped mice with liver injuries, but we have to be super cautious here. What works in a chicken or a mouse, well, it very often doesn't pan out the same way in humans. It's a clue, not a conclusion.
All right, let's pivot to something else. How about male fertility? This is an area where there's actually some human data, which is great. The question is, can ALA improve sperm quality?
And here, we do see something pretty interesting. A review of a few human trials found that ALA improved what's called sperm progressive motility. That's basically just a fancy way of saying how well sperm can swim forward. And the improvement, about 6.9 points, was statistically real. So this is a genuinely promising finding. But even the scientists who did this review said, hey, we need bigger, better designed trials to really confirm this.
And what about kidneys? Could ALA help protect the kidneys from the kind of damage that can happen with diabetes?
Okay, so for this one, we have to zoom way in. We're talking about research done on human kidney cells in a petri dish. Now, in the lab, when scientists mimicked diabetic conditions, ALA did seem to reduce signs of inflammation and damage. It's a fascinating look at a possible mechanism, how it might work. But, and this is a huge but, what happens in a lab dish is a million miles away from what happens in a living, breathing person. It's step one of a very, very long journey.
So, after all that, after looking at the strongest evidence and some of the more preliminary stuff, where does that leave us? What's the final verdict on alpha-lipoic acid?
Well, let's start with the good news. On the safety front, ALA seems to be in the clear.
It's generally considered safe, and studies show that people can take pretty high doses, up to 2,400 milligrams, without running into serious problems. So that's reassuring.
But when we get to effectiveness, it's a very mixed bag. Let's just break it down. For its number one claim, diabetic nerve pain, the strongest evidence says it doesn't really work. For other things like liver health or male fertility, there are some glimmers of hope, some really promising early signals. But, and you've heard me say this a few times now, most of that positive data comes from animals or a petri dish. For almost every single claim out there, the story is the same. We just need more high-quality, long-term human studies.
So I think that leaves us with this final thought. Alpha-lipoic acid is this really fascinating molecule that's stuck at a crossroads, right between its potential biology and the very powerful pull of marketing. The real question isn't whether it could do something beneficial, it's for which, if any, of its many, many promises will the real scientific proof eventually show up. That's the question we're still waiting to have answered.